Good at that.
We're on the air.
Okay, welcome to the February 8th Board of Selectmen meeting, starting at 5 o'clock. We're going to go into executive session, and I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session. Is this per MSR?
MRSA 14056D, motion to go into executive session.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Is that mine?
All right. We are now in executive session at 5:01.
on the air.
Okay, it's a Board of Selectmen meeting on February 8th. It's 6:08, and we've just come out of executive session per MRSA 14056D, discussion of labor contracts and proposals for upcoming negotiations. I'll entertain,
Oh, you need a
Approvals.
motion?
yeah, need a motion to come out, sure. Right.
I make a motion to come out of executive session, MRSA 1405-6D.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, we're back in session. So, a motion to approve the 3 minutes of January 15th, 25th, and 30th.
I was here for all those. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay. Public forum, an opportunity for anyone who wants to address the Board of Selectmen with any issue that is not on the agenda. Anybody?
Hi, Kate Bowerberg, Summer Breeze Lane. Just really more a procedural question. We do have, and my cohorts are not here yet, some issues we want to raise with relate to the storm. And now that we have a storm damage item on the agenda, I just wanted to make sure that there will be opportunity for public comment on that issue
Of course,
when we get to it.
of course.
Thank you. No public comments from us
Okay.
then.
Okay, Alan Daggett has joined us. Okay, Bob, Dominic,
Say hey, Alan.
do you want to?
We need to hear Alan's voice, I believe, don't we?
Alan, would you say hello? He's probably muted.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep, we got you. Okay, thanks.
Welcome, Alan.
Yep.
I used to not have to wear these glasses, but now, Lord knows what I would say if I didn't put them on, so. I looked at the agenda and I thought that tonight would be.
I'm sorry, for the record, could you introduce
Oh,
yourself and your
yes,
address?
I'm sorry, I always forget to do that.
okay, it's
I forget the same thing at Graves Library, so. It's Bob Dominy, I'm from over in Cape Porpoise. So I looked at the agenda and I saw some things were on it and some things weren't, and maybe this would be a good time just to share some friendly thoughts with the selectmen. What I really wanted to say tonight is that right now, I can't find that I really support the Climate Committee as a standing committee. And I believe that its limited charter should probably be allowed to expire. And I also don't really support a climate action plan, which I just personally believe will end up being sort of a carte blanche for what I call local government overreach into many aspects of everyday citizens' lives that I don't really think are particularly appropriate. And I wanted to give you one example to support this thinking. And before I give this example, I'm going to be talking about tourism, but I want you to know I love tourism. I love being a traveler. I love all these people who visit us. I make a lot of money from looking at tourism here and around the country. I love tourism. I also love my backpack blower. I have one. So, I'm just giving an example. So in 2022, the Maine Beaches tourism region, that's that little strip down here along the coast, the Maine Tourism Beaches region attracted 4.8 million visitors. And I know that because I have the visitor tracking report from 2022. And what I also know from this report is that 1% of those were international, non-Canada travelers who almost certainly flew to get here. And that would be 48,000, round number. Now, another thing I know is that the average transatlantic flight produces about 2,200 pounds of carbon dioxide per passenger. And I know that because I have this International Council on Clean Transportation document here. And so those 48,000 people created 106 million pounds of carbon dioxide just to get here and go home. Just that little 1%. So there we have a sort of a climate impact of a very thin slice of travelers to beaches region in 2022. Now let's talk about backpack blowers. And I'm only talking about that because it's often, I think, a target of climate advocates. It's a lightning rod. And so I did a little research on that, and I discovered that the average backpack blower creates about 90 pounds of CO2 for 8 hours of operation. And, you know, except for those fall cleanups, almost nobody runs one for 8 hours a day. But for the sake of comparing international visitors to backpack blowers, it would take a fellow with a leaf blower 1.2 million days to create the same carbon dioxide as 1 year's worth of international visitors to the beaches region. 1.2 million days of backpack blowing to equal those international visitors flying to and from Maine. And now here's the clincher for me. Even as the Climate Committee considers banning gas-fueled backpack blowers, it's the official policy of the Maine Office of Tourism to get as many of those tourists here as they can. And again, that's okay with me. I'm not arguing about that. I'm just pointing out that Maine Office of Tourism is spending $20 million a year doing this. And I know that because I have the Maine State Government Annual Report. So where I end up with all of this, in this just one little simple example, is that as long as Maine is going to spend $20 million a year attracting travelers, resulting in 48,000 international visitors to our little beaches region, creating 106 million pounds of carbon dioxide just from those flights, ejected into the upper atmosphere where it does the most damage, I don't really have much interest in a local committee making an ordinance against some homeowners and some landscapers using gas-powered backpack blowers. I think it's government overreach. I think it's a little bit of nonsense. I think it's not the kind of power and authority that I would personally recommend giving to a standing committee and to a report that people can then conveniently point at and say, yeah, we got to do it because it says so right here in the report. So thank you for the opportunity to respectfully share that opinion.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
I have a minute to respond? Thank you.
If you feel you have to.
Thank you. Yeah, I just would like to point out that, one, there is not a mandate in the draft climate proposal to eliminate lawn blower mowers or any two-cycle engine. Also, there's certainly no power in any standing committee to write an ordinance, to create an ordinance. All ordinances have to come through the Board of Selectmen, and then they have to be voted on by the town as a whole. So if even there were a recommendation to come out of the committee saying they should create an ordinance to ban leaf blowers, the town has more than ample, and the citizens at large, to be able to not have that happen. So I just wanted to be clear on that this is not something that's in the power of, certainly not the ad hoc committee, or in the future, if there were to become a standing committee. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Moving on, we have a presentation by Galen of the proposed June 2024 ordinance changes for the LD 2003 Land Use Ordinance Amendments and the Floodplain Ordinance Amendment.
Good evening, Select Board.
Hey,
Good evening.
Are you all recovered?
I'm recovering well. Thank
right,
you for
great.
asking.
This is Galen's third night on his recovery week, so.
Yes. So the growth, I want to give you a quick update regarding the Growth Planning Committee. They met this week to go over some proposed changes for the LD 2003 land use ordinance proposals that are in front of you. In your packet, you will notice that there is a memo that outlines some questions that were raised by members as well as some suggestions and feedback that I received when I discussed with Maine DECD, some of the proposals and some of the concerns that the community and committee has brought forward. And so the committee had a very good discussion about these changes. What I can tell you is, as a summary, we, as staff, we made a nice affordable housing Venn diagram to help people understand the affordable housing density bonus. And so what I'd like to use as color coding is yellow is caution, green is go, and blue is freeze. So what the two Venn diagrams stipulate is that the yellow is places that are multiplex is allowed, so that's multifamily is allowed to be zoned. And then the blue is your growth map areas, and that's the different zones that are in those two brackets. And then where it overlaps in the green is where they are in the growth area, and it's also zoned for multiplex. So the green means you can automatically get the housing density bonus for affordable housing. Yellow means caution, you need public water or sewer to take advantage of that bonus. And then the blue, even though they have the growth area, they don't have the zone for multiplex, and so they don't get the bonus. And then down at the bottom, we made a little box that showed all the other zones that don't allow for the bonus. So that was a good educational piece. Out of that discussion, there were some proposed changes. We suggest adding a definition for multifamily to be included in the definition of multiplex. So that was something that was added. The other sections that were added were the average median income. The definition was added, and then we rephrased the affordable housing definition to make it easier for people to understand what that definition actually means. At this meeting, we also discussed the double dipping provision. So this was in regards to the 2 to 4 units where it's a one and done bonus type. You can't just keep coming back and forth for additional bonuses. And then we also discussed the one and done policy for one accessory apartment per lot. And the reason for that requirement that we're looking at from a code enforcement perspective is down the line when staff changes and the years go by, it makes it difficult when you have multiple single families on one lot and then they each get their own accessory apartment. So if they want to go with that bonus, they just have to do a formal subdivision and divide those lots up. So that was a quick overview of LD 2003 discussions, and I'll welcome any questions that you might have.
Questions from anybody?
So I think that one thing that's come up since our last meeting is that the board is interested in having a workshop to talk about some of this information in more detail. Is that accurate?
That's accurate. Mary Beth and I were talking about that today, and that, do you want to say it, Mary Beth? Go
ahead, Mike.
All right. So there's a lot out there about LD 2003, so we thought it might be a good idea if we got the select board, the planning board, the growth planning committee, and anybody in the public who is interested to have, if we have a workshop someday soon, that would explain the nuances of 2003 so that we all get the same basis at the same time.
Okay.
Because I think there are a lot of things sort of, some out here in one place and something out here in another place, and I might have a different interpretation of it, so others will. So if we could just sort of get together and coordinate the whole thing, I think it'd be a great idea.
I think that's a fantastic idea, and as I mentioned at the Growth Planning Committee meeting the other night, the state has DECD representatives that are willing to attend any public meetings, so they are at your disposal. If you do decide on a mutual date, I can most certainly invite them, and you can get it from the horse's mouth from the state.
We have questions, I think that's good.
Yep.
They should be there.
Say that again?
Yes, they should be there.
Yeah, no, I agree, yeah. Do you agree too? They
Yep,
should be?
absolutely.
Okay, so
So
You're-
we'll work to try and schedule a
see
date.
if you can't get a date, and we'll make sure that we can get as many people as possible there, here or there, wherever we go.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
That's great.
Do you want an update for the floodplain or?
Yes, the floodplain, yeah.
Okay. Update for the floodplain, we are,
Was there a
Do
question?
you have a question about LD 2003, Bob?
A comment, but at the appropriate moment.
Okay.
just an update, quick update for the floodplain. You have the draft language that's in front of you. I did reach out to our attorney that is specializing on this particular topic. They have not received feedback from the state yet. for if the amendment that she's proposing would be adequate for the state standards. So when we get an update, we'll be sure to give you that.
Okay, great. Okay, Bob, you got a comment?
I'll tell you what Lori said to me later. Yeah, but she gave me a nice background on that.
Yes, again, it's Bob Dominy from Cape Porpoise. The only thing I find strange with this whole land use thing and the direction it seems to be going with impetus from the state level is that I've spent 28 years as a Maine resident basically being whipped into submission and understanding that I couldn't do anything at all with my property. I couldn't build another house. I couldn't have an apartment. I couldn't do anything. Now, all of a sudden, by God, the more houses, the better. The more houses we can jam on every lot, the better it is. And I don't really trust government, and my guess is that there's an ulterior motive driving that, and it has nothing to do with anything, because I'll tell you what's going to happen in Cape Porpoise on properties like mine is we're going to build houses like there's no tomorrow on the lots that will allow it, and none of them are going to be affordable. None of them are going to be multifamily dwellings. That's not driving it. So what is driving it is the ability to create what I might term excessive density in some parts of towns across the state. And it's hard to support, and it's just hard to understand.
Well,
Such a
maybe you'll-
180-degree
maybe you'll come to our
turnaround.
meeting and maybe you'll get some understanding of it.
Okay. Or,
I mean, you're
or
invited.
just read the minutes.
You're invited.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that, Mike.
Thanks, Bob.
I do have just a question. There is a limit on the number of permits that can be taken out in any given year for a new building, correct?
That's correct. There's 40 for the town that are issued, and they're allocated based off the growth areas in town.
So the assumption that there'd be a huge explosion of building would be up to 40 a year at current rate?
That's correct.
Let's
Yep.
just be clear on that.
Yep.
Thank you.
And they're also the developers, any developer that wants to come to town, this is current policy. They're limited to 7 max per year, and then at the end of the year, if there are extra left over, they can apply.
So
the
any
7.
single developer is
Yep.
limited to a max 7?
Yep,
Yeah.
till
It's a-
December. Then if there's any left over in
Maybe
that
more of
zone-
a small pop than an explosion, just a thought.
Okay, thanks, Gail. Anybody have a question? No? Okay, approval of construction of bridges for
We
the
need
way.
the floodplain was done, right? We did, okay.
I thought it was. Okay. Approval of bid for construction of bridges of wastewater tanks.
Yeah, so in the last budget, in the capital program, we approved $60,000 to purchase bridges to go over the anoxic zone at our aeration tanks. And so we could put new mixers in there. We purchased the mixers. Those are in our garage right now in place. The next thing we need to do is purchase these bridges and get them installed. Since we didn't have a design for these bridges, we opted to go to a manufacturer fabricator and have them utilize their engineers to basically do the design. They usually can do the designs at a cheaper price, which in this particular case was $3,000, which is pretty reasonable for hiring an engineering firm to do these designs. They've come back with a price of $57,703 to build, to basically, with the design, fabrication, as well as the installation of the 3 bridges. 3 bridges, mind you. Initially, we had budgeted, we only anticipated putting in 2. However, this particular fabricator was able to fabricate all 3 of them for that
nice.
price and still get us under budget. And we do feel that probably in the near future, we'll end up putting in another anoxic zone. So we felt it probably might be the right time to do it while we've got good pricing for these things. I did want to cost check this individual, so we did go to Apex Construction and tried to get them a short, just kind of, behind the napkin kind of situation, just on the napkin kind of estimates. And the estimates that they had for the 3 bridges was probably, in their gut was around $90,000. So we feel pretty good about the price. It is a local fabricator just in Wells right here.
Oh, great.
People we've worked with before, just on the other side of the Kennebunk line in Wells on Route 1. So it is a fabricator that's reputable, small shop. You know, obviously Economical has been great to work with, and I'd just like to recommend that we sole source that individual.
All right.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
On the homework, that's,
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion that we buy the, let me get this.
Bridges.
We buy the bridges for wastewater tanks, 3 of them for $57,703.02.
second.
All those in favor? Aye? Okay.
Aye.
5-0.
Thank you,
5-0.
Alan.
Thanks, Alan.
Welcome.
Oh, that's right.
I
Again,
can't do two.
we forgot
I'm
you,
still
Alan.
here.
Okay, review of the January 13, 2024 storm response. Should we say storm? Okay. You want to do that?
Yep. Yep, so in your packet, there is a memo where the public safety team and I try to give you feedback on the storm. So certainly in January, we had the January 10th and 13th, which were severe storms that brought historic flooding, not only to the Maine coast in general, but certainly to Kennebunkport. We saw flooding in areas that we had never seen flooding before. It has been compared to the 1978 storm. They reported record sea levels in Portland Harbor, and the storm prediction did not relate to the actual events, and so it brought people many surprises. We have completed our initial FEMA declaration estimate, and that is a broad estimate that we submit when the state then sends it to the federal government on a county basis. And that estimate was $850,000. I would say the largest parts of that estimate were in Dock Square under the boardwalk sidewalk, on Ocean Avenue, under the bulkhead there, as well as at Cape Porpoise Pier. So you know the level of flooding we saw. We also experienced a high level of rain that day, and so there was flooding that was taking place on interior streets even before the sea level rise and tide came. Another exacerbating factor was the frozen ground. And so there was saturation. The ground could not take up the water. So we have broken our analysis into, strengths, challenges, and recommendations for the future. So I thought I would just turn it over to the crew who was out in the trenches that day. And I thought I'd start with our EMA Director, Chief Sanford.
Good evening, Chief.
Good evening, everyone. As Lori said, and in the memo, those 2 storms were big for here. That were very tragic as far as the damage went. On the 10th, we had a full complement, and we had staged barricades ahead of schedule. The highway crew was really good about taking care of that and helping out. Sandbags, because those things seem to float away in most cases. We handled the 10th storm fairly well. There was some damage. I was out doing the initial estimate with Chris the day after, and we had, I think, right around $40,000 or $50,000 in damage, if I can remember, in the initial estimate. And then when we got to the 13th, we kind of played off what happened on the 10th, because they were supposed to be almost like mirror storms. In fact, it wasn't, because the rain didn't actually end up being what it was actually supposed to be. It was double, if not close to triple, the amount of rain, and it came very quick. I had 5 on that day, myself included. We spent a lot of our time trying to keep people out of dangerous situations. It's sad, but people are moving barricades, going around them. We had cars stuck in water. We actually took the time to summons a couple of folks because they went around, purposely moved barricades, and we were down trying to keep people out of very, very high water. I spent probably 2 hours myself down near Wamby just trying to keep people back because the road was fluttering like a piece of paper as the water came across, and people had to try to get down in there. And we had a lot of folks trying to view the damage and what was going on all along Ocean Ave, which was really tough for us to manage. I was constantly on the phone with York County EMA. I had to call in when roads started to wash out. We knew that we were going to be in some big trouble as far as the traffic. So with the barricades not working, we got some Jersey barriers from the Maine Turnpike Authority. I was able to work that out. And in late evening, we had some delivered. I think we had like, 25 delivered, if I remember, Chris? 20 or 25 delivered over to Colony Beach. So it was challenging with the people that we had. Being a small municipality, we run out of folks real quick. The department heads have to be out there helping as well because you run out of bodies really quick. So that's kind of an overview. We are continuing now. I was out again today taking measurements, trying to get those initial measurements into FEMA. They require a lot of stuff now just to try to make the initial push for the declaration. So I would say probably in the next 2 to 4 weeks we might hear if we might actually have an official declaration, which, all intents and purposes, I'm pretty sure we're guaranteed in that with all the damage. So, any
Kudos
questions?
to you and your staff.
Great job.
Thanks.
Excellent.
Great job.
Thanks.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, Chris, welcome.
So I'll speak to this from a public works standpoint. Obviously the second storm was, the larger of the two, and that was one that was more problematic for us. So we did have crew come in Friday night for the high tide event, just to monitor, the roadways and establish, barricades, put those out if we needed to. Friday night wasn't so much a problem as was Saturday. So Saturday, both crews, both wastewater and the highway crews were called in, full crews, because both of us were dealing with issues on both sides. Eric came in to manage the wastewater crew for the challenges that we had going on, within the collection system and at the plant, and I was managing the highway crew. Some of the strengths, I think we were, fairly well prepared. Stuff went out. I think, we weren't expecting the intensity of the storm that we actually ended up having. I think at the time they were predicting a half an inch of rain. We recorded 3.1 inches of rain at the plant in a very short period of time. That coupled with snow melt and, frozen ground didn't allow the water to be taken up anywhere. So that water made its way, into the interior roads, never mind the tidal issues that we were experiencing as well. As the chief said, a lot of storm tourism going on. It was difficult not only for them to prevent people from putting themselves in precarious situations, but it was difficult for public works crews operating heavy equipment, trying to get in and out of places with big machinery, having to worry about people, that were down, walking around, taking pictures, vehicles, getting into places where there was no place to turn around that we were trying to do work at, complicated things. Did make things easier after the Jersey barrier showed up. We were able to put those out right away in the hard closure areas where we had damage, and knew we had to close those down. Overall, by Saturday at 8 p.m., we had all the roads opened back up with the exception of Ocean Avenue down in the area of St. Anne's Church and Wamby Beach. Wamby Beach was damaged to the point where we couldn't allow, vehicle traffic to traverse that. And then we had to let the tidal water down at St. Anne's, recede before we could clean that road up. But for the most part, everything was opened up, Saturday night at 8 o'clock. The other challenging place that we had was down at the west end of the beach. We experienced some flooding down there. That flooding was obviously tidal. It was also coupled with the rain that we had. We don't have any drainage to speak of down at that end of the beach, so that water kind of sat in Kings Highway. In the past, it's kind of always receded on its own, within a day or two. It didn't this time. We did try to get a hold of, a large trash pump that we could pump the road off, but they were not available. We called around, and nothing available anywhere down as far as Massachusetts. So that was our biggest challenge, I think, that week. Other than that, I think for the most part, both crews managed it as well as they could. So.
You did an excellent job.
Excellent.
Yep.
Absolutely.
It took a little while, we know.
Yeah.
But you guys were there, right on top of everything. So
Well, thank you.
we thank you.
Yep, thank you.
And I wonder if you take a minute, I know that, and maybe Chief Everett will address this, but the way you finally solved the issue at the west end was to lift the manhole covers. Could you just comment what the implications of that are in terms of our treatment plant?
Sure. So, that is not an ideal long-term solution. That's not something that we should be doing. The issue with that is that water is all water that's going to have to come to the plant and be treated. That water obviously is salt water. We don't like to receive that at the plant because that has implications on our flock. Our flock is, the biological body of the plant that does all the work. So typically, we can get a plant upset where we have settability issues. Those settability issues can lead to, permit violations for us. So that is a risk that we'd rather not manage, and that's why I say it's not really a long-term solution. So we do need to come up with something different.
Can you just talk, Chris, part of the issue with taking in that water was what other water we were receiving. And so in the midst of the storm, that certainly wasn't available, and we needed to let some other things percolate down before our pumps could take that in.
Correct, yeah. Our flows were beyond peak during the storm. So, we couldn't accept any more water at the plant. Took a few days for the plant to settle out before we could even, open those manhole covers to allow that water to get down to the pump station and ultimately be pumped to the plant, so.
So that delayed things. And then if this were in the middle of the summer?
If this was in the middle of the summer, it probably would have been worse. This time of year, we're typically operating on one aeration tank, due to the flows that are coming in and the BOD loading that we have. So we have a couple extra aeration tanks that we can keep offline during this time of year. They're about 107,000 gallons apiece. And so we generally try to open those as a last resort to kind of stave off that high peak of flow. But even doing that with this storm, we weren't able to stave it off enough. So
you filled those, and of course, had they already been full because of the summer, all that would have been extra, and it could have been rather catastrophic.
Yes.
Yes, that's important to do.
Yep.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris. Great job. Welcome, Jay.
Good evening. So for the fire department, a similar, the people that I had, came from home to come out and do things, and we did what we could and prioritize calls as they came in. Because we were getting a lot of emergent calls, like smoke in the buildings, because we had at one point 6 or 7 buildings that were sizzling due to the water and the electric still being on, and that's when the decision was made to shut down the area. Because it certainly wasn't ideal for the people, and I want to have everything we have plus a bunch of mutual aid in if we had that same circumstance without the water portion. But we couldn't get any mutual aid from anybody. Every town was dealing with the same thing. So we're on our own until, things can calm down. But to make things safe, I know it's an inconvenience, but, CMP did put back on the power as quick as they could to isolate it into the smallest affected area. But having those types of calls, those 6 or 7 buildings with smoke in them. That's, usually takes us a year or more to have that many. So that was a little hairy, but we pulled a couple people out of a car that they thought they could drive through the 2 feet of water and the waves. You probably had a good view of it, Mike.
I watched the whole thing, but the thing I want to I commend the guy, I don't know who the guy was, your guy. He got out of the truck, the water's 4 feet, maybe 4.5 feet deep.
Yeah.
And the car is floating, and the guy is still in it and driving it, trying to drive it.
Right.
Trying to drive it. He was actually floating. And so your guy got out, put pack boots on, it's all he had. And with him at the time on the truck that he was on.
Yep.
And he put the pack boots on and waded out there with water up, all the way up to his hips. And that water was cold.
Oh, yeah.
He got the guy out of the truck, out of the car, the car, and got him out of there. But it was like above and beyond.
Right.
It was a good job.
Thanks. And I, one of the things too, normally we're trying to preserve, life and property and the environment. But, one of the things, and I wasn't at that call until after because of all the other stuff going on, but I said, that car's done. We are not trying to help save that car because we could have ended up in it as well with one of our vehicles or got somebody hurt for something that the insurance company or somebody's going to replace. It
was a total loss.
Yeah.
Yeah, they said they gave it a Viking burial. So.
Yeah. So again, with everything we had, a lot of talk came up on we were getting calls for pumping basements while we were getting these other calls and floating LP tanks that have broken away from buildings because of the storm surge and were leaking. And again, I'm listening to these calls while I'm in my truck going from call to call. Every other town's dealing with the same exact thing. And so there were a couple that were, I would say, reasonably dangerous. Most of them were, okay, here, we shut it off and we're good. But, just the magnitude of it and the people we had. So we were trying to do the calls. No emergent call got put down a list. But the flooded basements and things like that would. And I think at some point we should have a discussion on whether that's what we should be doing or not. But not right now, but that was probably half our calls when you look at the total number of, I want to say it was 60 calls in that time period. And there were probably some that maybe weren't recorded properly because someone might have come up to somebody at another call and said, hey, there's a tank over here that's leaking. And, if we didn't get it and be able to collect it through dispatch and get a number assignment, so there probably were more, but officially it was around 62 or 3 in that. Well, I finally left town at, I think, 11 o'clock that night.
Yeah.
Because turning the power back on was a whole new thing that I learned, and I basically had to give my firstborn to take on the responsibility of turning it back on, based on, because it was anytime anything electrically gets wet, it's supposed to be inspected by an electrician and given the okay to turn it back on. And I had to tell CMP, well, no, I don't know about this one, or this one. So they're like, okay, we'll disconnect them from the grid, but we'll turn the rest of them back on. I didn't realize it was such a process. And he's like, I need it in writing. I go, well, unless you come down here and get it and I write it on your folder or something. No, a text message will be fine. So anyway, and then I drove around making sure nothing bad happened because, I'm the one that said, yep, you can turn it on. And so anyway.
Great job to you and your folks.
Yep.
Wonderful job.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
I'd like to suggest
you.
a round of applause from us and everyone. Thank you.
So, just to follow up, I think people did the best job they could with the circumstances we had, and I'm very proud of our staff. But there are always lessons learned, and we've taken some time to think about those. And so in your recommendations for the future, One of the things we are recommending is that we issue a notice to evacuate hazardous flooded locations in town. We know where those traditionally are. Langsford Road was a new one this year. New Bedford Road was a new one this year. But we've talked about having a nuisance flood program, and we do have some information we started working on last year on the website, but to really have an evacuation protocol. And notify people that we're recommending, and when we were doing the beach tour, you know, John Crowder was suggesting a certain flood elevation, because one of the questions is, what's the lever? You know, what's the lever that would make us go to that? Because our concern also is if you do too many evacuation notices, people, it's like the weatherman says, oh, we're gonna get 12 inches of snow, and people say, sure, I'll believe it when I see it. But I think that that's something that the town should take into account. One of the recommendations was purchasing additional message boards. We have one right now, and that we might need them in certain locations to deploy to help communicate and convey messages. That we call an additional fire and dispatch personnel in advance of the storm, and have fire crews stationed with equipment. I mean, some of that is dependent on people's availability. And again, you don't want to burn out your crew by having them come too much. And of course, there's a cost, an operational cost to that. Providing a storm refuge while people wait out flooding events. And so certainly if we're going to evacuate, we need to give people a place to go. And so we talked about whether we have it here at the fire station or some other location. We would need staff to come in, and probably this would be administrative staff because our public safety crews would be busy. Deploying Jersey barriers in advance, so those would be hard closures. So we are looking to purchase the Jersey barriers that Main Turnpike. They're replenishing their Jersey barrier stock, so these are their old ones, and they offer to sell them to us. We have to be careful where we deploy those, because those are much more challenging to remove in an emergency than a simple barricade. We talked about considering the purchase of a trash pump, and so at the beach tour, I mean, Chris gave an estimate of about $50,000. I think the pro there is you have one when you need one. The con is that there's a lot of days you're not going to need it, and it's an expensive asset to have sitting there. We talked about staffing dispatch with an additional person, and I was at the town office answering calls, but we probably needed, it happened on a weekend, to bring people in, especially the public works line. A lot of people were calling that, to increase our ability for people to get their messages out. And we talked about creating a nuisance flooding alert. So even if we don't have a large storm coming, we, every king tide, astronomical high tide, we have flooding at certain areas, and we need to make people aware, don't drive through them. These are dangerous areas, and be aware it's a nuisance flooding day. I think we need to educate the public about preparation. So certainly we've seen a lot of people who are storing things in their basements and have mechanical equipment in their basements, and based on the elevation their home is at and where we're seeing these flooding events, they probably need to do something different about that and about preparing for the storm. And so what are going to be things that they should be in preparation for versus the town? And Jay talked a little bit about the pump out policy. You know, there were a lot of public expectations about our ability to pump out their basements and areas. I think we've traditionally done that when people have frozen pipes or they've had a fire or some other issue, and it has now turned into a flood pump program, which was not our intent, and it puts our staff in some dangerous situations. And so the chief and I have talked about a notification to the public that that's not the purpose of the fire department pump out program, and people need to take additional measures themselves, make sure that their sump pumps working and maintained. And then communicate and prepare personnel at all levels regarding the town's protocols and policies. So you can imagine we have on-call firefighters, and we have wastewater employees and public works employees and police officers, and people are stopping them and talking to them, and maybe different messaging was heard depending on who you talk to. And so we thought we should probably prepare more on that. And then we talked about wastewater as well, and we've talked about the INI situation. So the additional water from people's homes that were coming in from their own sump pumps into our system. So none of these recommendations mean that we'll be 100%, but they are recommendations we're considering. We certainly want the board's feedback on those. And ultimately, you know, we need to address every situation and every circumstance based on those measures. I also included a storm surge concern list of roads that we identified in these storms. Some of them are private property. Some of them are drainage and flooding issues. Some of them are flooding from sea level rise. And of course, our wastewater infrastructure across the whole town is of a concern. I would note that one of the issues that came up on the list is Prescott Drive. And that was not drainage or flooding, but when other areas of town were impassable or flooded, there are a host of streets in the back of Goose Rocks that are private. And we did hear concerns from those residents that they were being used for public access and thought that that was a bit unfair. So, I mean, we put that on the list as well. So that gives you a round out of our analysis.
Okay, questions? Okay, you had a question?
Comments?
Somebody, or comments?
Hi, Kate Bauer-Burke again, Summer Breeze Lane, in the affected areas that Lori just referred to. And this is why a couple of us are here from that area tonight, because as we saw in this most recent round of storms, there was a period during the storm, and the second storm particularly, and slightly after that, where I'm going to call it the Beaver Pond corridor rather than just the Prescott Road. There are several roads involved that are private roads used as a public thoroughfare, but that's not what we're here to argue about. There are roads there that turned out to be the only access point or evacuation route safe that could be used to get in or out of the beach. We know that most of the emergency vehicles that came down by that corridor, the Beaver Pond corridor. We're not here to say, wow, we want you to take it over as a public road or anything. But we're perfectly comfortable with the fact it's our responsibility to snowplow and to do normal maintenance. But there are some things, and I'm going to let John Downey speak to this. He's done some preliminary looking with the contractor, talking to the contractor who normally maintains those roads. If we want to first and foremost do something that is perhaps relatively inexpensive in comparison to things we might have to do, say, to solve the Langsford Road or Dyke Road or New Biddeford Road problems, there are some things that could be done, and we think, quite honestly, that this part should be the town's responsibility to do some improvements on drainage and culvert in the few places to make it more reliable that you will have a viable access route and evacuation route. It was one thing this winter where we are still more of a year-round community than we used to be at Goose Rocks. We're not just a seasonal community and nobody's there. But can you imagine if this had happened in the height of the summer? And we could very well have storms like this in the summer. We all know this is probably maybe going to become more the new normal. So I'm going to turn it over to John, who could tell you what he's seen so far. And basically, we're asking the town to really help out in this, perhaps even ask some of the town officials to take a look. We don't want to, look totally at private contractors to see if we can make the few improvements that might be needed to ensure that we have this public safety issue resolved. Thanks.
Thank you.
John.
Thank you.
Hi, John Downey, 16 Prescott Drive. I think she read my notes as she was sitting next to me. First of all, just a couple of comments. First, I want to thank Chris called Chris just a few days afterwards, after some of this stuff settled down, and I want to thank him for returning my call right away. Thank you, we had a great conversation. And Laura, your comment about us thinking it's unfair, we don't really think it's unfair. We're really here for a specific reason. The storm was unprecedented, right? We realize that, and I'm not here to talk about summer traffic. I'm not talking about GPS sending everybody down our road. I'm talking about our road is deemed as private. It should almost be deemed as access, because it literally was the access road to the population at the beach during the storm surge. I know I'm on Prescott, and down the corner there's a culvert that's been blocked since before I moved there. So I know it doesn't work. So it does rise and fall. The level on the right-hand side does rise and fall with the tide a bit. So the water did run off. There was quite a bit of damage done to the road. We take on full responsibility for grading, and we know it. We bought it. And for snow plowing, we bought it. My concern is that during the storm, and I know Bob lives right in the corner, doesn't miss a damn thing. All the town vehicles, emergency vehicles, et cetera, had to use that road and go around that corner to get to the population at the beach. So the risk, population risk on a chart that Kate has over there showed us as either a 0 or 1. We're not the road that I'm talking about, quite frankly. I'm talking about is an access road. It's the population to the beach and everybody between the beach and us that the vehicles had to use. If it went up another level, I would say that emergency vehicles would have a tough time getting down that road just to get access to the beach. So again, we take full responsibility for the maintenance of that road, but I would ask the town to be a partner. And as we talk about a resiliency plan, to bring the road standard to a height where it be resilient against future storms, which is a grading and a stone situation. I have spoken to the contractor that's taking care of my road for several years, as I run that road, and I think Kate runs Beaver Pond. And he actually had a specific plan as to the height the road would have to go to, because he's been up and down there quite a bit post-storm, and the kind of materials that he would use. And I would consider it low-hanging fruit compared to a Dock Square or a New Bedford or a Dyke Road is what you would face cost-wise. But as far as its importance to either access or evacuation, it's really more important than you might think sitting here in town. Because I think Chris would say that the vehicles they're using that road the whole time. So I guess I'm sitting here saying to you that if we can partner to bring it up to a grade, which is, I think our contractor said about 12 inches higher, and he explained just how to build it, with culvert down and across to get as much water out into the field, if you will, heading between us and New Bedford, it could keep the road up. And from that point, we would obviously maintain it year after year after year. We'll plow it. But it could get to a point where emergency vehicles can't get to a house. Whether it's an ambulance or a fire or police, whatever the case might be, they need access. And so I would like it to be called an access road rather than a private road. So is there anything, I don't know if this is a point for a question, but have you faced this before in any situations? Have people come to you on a private road? I know everybody wants you to pay for everything. We're good for it. But this is a special case because God forbid somebody mentioned, what if it happened in the summer and you got 10,000 people, whatever that number is, it's got to go through our road. And I don't think it's unfair that they use it. I just want it to be safe and I want it to be accessible so they can get to Route 9 and get the heck out if they have to evacuate. So we really need your help just to partner to bring it up to grade. We will maintain it from that point. And if you can direct me and the team, if you will, to how to try to pursue that to another level, I'll put in the time, and as exhausting as it could be, I'd be willing to work with anybody to get it to that point. And again, our commitment is to keep it maintained after that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from anybody? No?
I just
Thank
have
you.
a general comment from the last storm that we saw, which is maybe different than previous storms. The Jeffries Way, we always talk about Dyke Road, and I know you guys mentioned that New Bedford Road was the nuance or the new one. And I think what's happening there is the entrance into Jeffries Way is widened quite a bit. Last couple storms, it's remarkably wide, and I know we don't or can't block that because of that's the emergency access to the beach. And I think what happened in the last storm, we got a huge river of storm surge up through there, and then just started to float and take over Kings Highway. And I think it actually plugged the one of the manholes there or something, because I saw one of the workers there trying to loosen it up. And so that actually was causing more of the issue, as well as just the general Beaver Creek swell, taking the river swell up there. So I think that's a very interesting point, to have that center point that is away from marshes, if I understand it correctly, and comes through that center of town to get to the base of Kings.
Thank you. Anybody else? No? John?
So I just wanted to have Chris come back up and give an update on where we are with storm repair. And so Ocean Avenue is still closed. We did have, after the storm settled down, our engineers, Woodard and Curran, who had done the design work for the increasing of the height of Ocean Avenue out by Wanby Beach, out to look at the damage as well. So right now, the pavement is buckled, as you saw when we took our tour, and there was a lot of erosion that's happened, and certainly the parking area has been disrupted. So one option was we could peel back the pavement, turn it into a dirt road for now, and open that up. Our concern has been that February and March, we get more of these types of storms, and what will happen is all of that gravel will get washed into the marsh. There will be nothing protecting that road. And so the recommendation from the engineers was to keep the pavement on the road as it is to help protect it. And then once we get into March, to start peeling that up. And our plan is to put the road back together and have it open by, sometime in the beginning of May. We have to wait for our asphalt plants to open as well to put asphalt back. So that is our plan. We did talk to our public safety team about Ocean Avenue remaining closed. Until that time, they all felt that it was adequate, that they're sending out reminders to the crews about the closure and the coming in from the two different entrances. The second piece is Colony Beach. And, that has turned into all live rock, and so the parking area is not something that can be used. We've put out a notice that we anticipate that will be closed for the summer for parking. Certainly, people can go to the beach, use the beach, go fishing out there, swimming, whatever. We've talked to some engineers. I would tell you that we don't have a good answer for you. We could put gravel back in there. Last year, we had come to the board and you had agreed to use contingency funding to put back half of the parking area, and we were estimating it at about a $40,000 cost. So you can imagine that's going to be more than double to try and put back the parking area. Last year in 2023, we said to you, this makes sense. We haven't seen this level of storm. We think it makes sense to keep fighting. In less than a year, we saw more destroyed. And so, Chris and I are feeling that it doesn't make financial sense to do that unless we have a different plan. It's a big conversation to have with the community about the permanent closure of parking at Colony Beach, I understand. We had another meeting with another group this morning to investigate other potential solutions. I would tell you that Eric and I were in that meeting. I didn't hold a lot of hope. And so we reached out to another firm today. So we are looking for solutions, but right now I don't have one for Colony. Do you have anything to add?
No, so I think the only thing I have to add other than that, obviously we do have, other damage down along Ocean Avenue that, we plan to take on. You know, after I get some, you know, harder numbers back, we'll probably, you know, present some options to you, such as deferring some of the capital projects that we had planned, you know, for this current fiscal year to fund those repairs,
So we're talking about the sidewalks.
the sidewalks.
That have given away in sides of the road.
In the wall.
Questions for Chris? Thanks. Thanks, Chris. Anybody else? Nope. Okay. Okay, moving on then, we're going to approval of the Dock Square parking lot fees for the 2024 year.
Okay, so it's going to be me. Hello, everyone. Yanina Nicholas, Director of Support Services, and I will talk to you about this item. So per our ordinance, every year, the Board of Selectmen reviews the fees for the Dock Square Park municipal parking lot, as well as the operations for that parking lot. So currently, we have fees set at $4 per hour. And there was a conversation and discussion among the board last year about increasing those fees to $5 per hour, yet it wasn't voted on. So, so that is one of the items that the board might consider. Yet, our ordinance says there is a 5-hour allowance to every real estate owner in the town of Kennebunkport. So we call this the Chaser Tickets program. In ordinance, it's called voucher system. So it is quite lengthy and process. So the way it goes is basically our town clerks send out application to the whole, to all of the real estate owners in Kennebunkport, and they say, hey, if you want to fill out this application and send it back, we will send you those Chaser tickets. So last year we had about, we sent out 7,675 tickets, and only 20% of those tickets were used at the Dock Square Municipal Parking Lot. So the second question, in addition to the setting the fee for the lot, is does this system make sense, and does the board want to explore other avenues? And the reason we ask is because this voucher system creates a challenge and a barrier for us to look into a different potentially better technology for the parking lot. So we cannot, you know, we looked into different machines and how we can upgrade the system, but this system, it just creates a challenge of how do you tell the system? How do you tell this machine that, you know, this is a resident, and it still becomes a manual labor. So.
I think when we started this, you know, however many years ago, part of the reason was that at the time, I don't know what, originally the parking behind Allison's was free.
That's right.
And then the first amount, I think, was $3.
I don't remember.
I think it was
Yeah.
$3, and then, or when the money came in, when the money was involved, the townspeople said, you know, look, you know, we pay taxes. Why should we pay to park? You know, this is our town. And so thus the vouchers came out. And when they initially came out, I think we got 12 parking permits. And then each year it got less and less, and now we're down to
5.
That's a substantial decrease. That being said, you know, I just think it's a service to our customers, to our people, to our residents. They're paying taxes. You know, it's like, okay, I'll pay the parking, but you know, over what they already pay. So I would not vote to get rid of it.
And I'm agreeing with Sheila, because, and I'm going to tell you why. If you go to the restaurant, go to Hurricanes or Allison's, you're going to be paying, a local resident will be paying $10 to $15 to park if they can find a parking spot to add to the price of a dinner or wherever they're going. It just, somehow along the way, we've got to find some way to make it work so that the 20% of the people who use those tickets can continue to use them. And why a lot of those didn't get used, likely, is because they can't find a parking place down there in the summertime. It's happened to me, and it's happened to other people, so, but I still think we've got to provide some way for our taxpayers to be able to use the parking lot.
But now, as I understand it, you're not, are you implying that if we went to a new system, that we would not be able to provide residents? Or are you saying that actually the new system might be more flexible in providing residents free parking?
So what we're saying is, well, one, the ordinance is ordinance, and this is more of an informational point for you. You know, as the board, you will decide however you want to proceed with this, and we will follow the instructions, obviously. We've dealt with this for so many years.
Maybe we'll go to 6.
So, perfect. So what we are saying is that we haven't seen any other town having this system in place, so there is no operational systems created for this particular
So what
instance.
what we have to do, so there are many automated parking systems out there. And we are looking at ones for the future in order to create more efficiencies. The challenge is this idiosyncrasy in our parking system is not something systems are built for. And so it really creates a challenge. It's like the tail wags the dog is the best way for me to say it. It's like I am building everything around this. And I understand that it is something that's valued, and I get calls from people who want us to have parking spots down there only for residents. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, and I've tried to think of other ways to replace it. But I'm telling you, it takes a lot of effort from staff. It takes a lot of money to mail them out. It takes a lot of effort to find a system that can take them in. You know, I've thought about, could people put their license plate number in a system and it somehow recognizes it? You know, I've asked a lot of different ways and questions. And I'm telling you that it is an obstacle that creates the system we have. And so I was curious, how many get redeemed? And so we did the numbers this year, and it surprised me how low the actual redemption is. And I wanted to make you aware of it.
And I'll say what Mike said, you know, we've gone down there with our little coupons.
Yep.
And can't find a parking place, so, you know, we don't get to use them. But,
There's always parking at Town Hall.
well, don't say that out loud.
And most of the time.
Shiro likes to walk a lot.
No, not during Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30.
Right.
But, you know, it's worked up till this point, hasn't it?
Well, it's the amount of labor that's involved. I think it's just the hassle of doing it.
I don't understand why you're sending out things twice. Why are you sending every?
Because when I buy those chaser tickets, it costs me money. And so if I send them to everybody, you know, that's an expense. I would say we're already sending it out for the beach stickers. Remember, we send you the beach sticker letter, so it's just part of the beach sticker letter.
What if we just had people come up and pick them up at the town hall?
That's what I was going to ask. Would that possibly work?
It certainly wouldn't work for some people's schedules, but it would work for us, sure.
Well, you know, again, if it's worth that much to people, you could even raise the number of, again, if that's in the ordinance, then that's what's so.
It's in the ordinance, yeah. And I'm not, nobody's asking you to change anything tonight.
Yep.
This is a
Something to think
seed
about.
I'm planting with you,
Okay.
that as we look for a new system, this is an obstacle
Well,
that I'm gonna bring up again.
yeah, I'm all for raising the price per hour, but I would like to maintain some way that the residents can have access to N number of tickets.
Yeah, and as Lori said, this is nothing we can change today. We couldn't even change it, you know, it would be a vote altogether. But, you know, maybe you will see us come across a system that has something
What
similar.
do they call the, you know, the little squares that you use your phone?
QR code.
QR code. Is there a way we could use a QR code? we get it on our phone or we get it through an email.
Yeah, I talked about that with one parking vendor, because it's like, I have a membership in Boston at the Museum of Fine Arts or Museum of Science, and I get a little electronic membership card now, and you put it in the parking, it gives you a discount.
Yeah.
So, you know, I've talked about other ways we might try and attack that,
Yeah.
and we are investigating them.
Okay,
Yeah, let's come up with a way.
okay.
Good.
So no action tonight?
Well,
We are looking for
the first one, yes.
Yeah. Do I have a motion to
I'd
raise
like
it?
to move that we raise the downtown parking lot fee from $4 to $5 an hour for starting, when?
Starting when?
May 1?
Starting May 1.
When?
Second.
Do I
Second,
have a second? All those in favor? Aye.
aye.
3, 2?
Four.
Was that a?
Four.
No.
Oh, 4, okay, 4. 4-1?
That's
Okay.
fair.
Wait, who didn't? 4-1.
Sheila.
Oh, okay.
Okay, motion pass. So now we have the discussion of the waiver of the beach stair building permits.
Was that on, or?
So Galen, do you want to come up? So we were recently asked by I want to make your night worth it. You came out, you know.
Pardon?
You came out, I want to make your night worth it.
Yes.
We had a resident bring forward the idea of so many people at Goose Rock's Beach lost their stairs. And could we waive the building permit fee and consider that for those people replacing the stairs? And so
What
I,
about docks? Kidding, never mind.
so we talked about it a little internally. I think the intent is a good one. I think there are some challenges that I asked Galen to talk about tonight.
Absolutely. So it is a very sympathetic gesture, and I understand certainly the intent behind the proposal that's being brought before you. There's a little bit different nuances. We did waive the demolition fees for this last storm, and the intent behind that was for federal reporting requirements for when we had disaster damage. That was why we waived that fee. That was the justification for it. In this case, even if the select board decides to waive the fees, these beach stairs require a NERPA permit. So that's that is a permit that's issued by DEP. That's a permit by rule, and so that's a cost of about $307 that they need to file with the state. Our permit fees are generally $40 plus $12 per thousand. So roughly you're looking at $50, $60 in that time frame. So the other issue that we found out from a code enforcement perspective is, unlike the disaster reporting requirements, these beach stairs will have to be inspected by the code enforcement officer that will have to go out physically and check these stairs to make sure that the spacing is correct with the stairs, make sure that the angles are correct per code. So there is staff time involved in going out and making sure that these projects are done correctly to avoid liability purposes, because if we don't do those inspections properly, the town, because we permitted it, would be liable. So we just wanted to make sure that we understand the intent behind it, but we just don't think that's a good policy to move forward with as staff.
So what I heard is that there's a $300+ cost goes to the state, not
Yep.
to the town.
Yep, that's correct. They have to
And-
file with the state.
Really, the town gets about a $50, $60, depending on the cost of the stairs,
Right,
which basically covers the staff time to get out there and do it.
yep.
And the state's not going to waive anything based on?
No,
No?
no. That has been approached by other towns in the past too, and they don't waive it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's no
Yeah.
action. I think it's a great idea, but the reality is.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not us, it's the
Yeah,
state.
yeah, it's not exactly. And we have real costs, so we've got to cover it.
so no action is necessary. just-
Unless
we're not
you
gonna-
guys want to take
Yeah.
action.
Do you want to take action? Do you want to vote on it, or? We
No,
don't
no.
have to, so.
No.
Yeah, I would hope, I would hope that those asking, I think they may not have realized that it's the state and not the town that's getting the $300.
Yeah.
And I guess I would, hopefully that will satisfy it, and if not, we'll hear from them.
Okay, very good. So the answer there is no, okay?
Just not possible.
No, not possible. Okay, other business. Mary Beth?
None, thank you.
No, thank you.
None here.
So we have asked Eric LaBelle to come give you a Pier Road update. We have some news about starting that construction.
Yes, hi, so we talked a little bit about the Pier Road, we awarded that quite a while back. We've been through, worked with the neighbors down there, and I think we've resolved most of our issues with them, which we're happy to be doing. So about a week and a half, we're gonna have a pre-construction meeting, and approximately a week later after that, around the 26th, February 26th, block is gonna begin to be delivered. So installation will begin probably in early March. So first week in March, possibly around that time. Project we expect to go through, I don't have a schedule yet, but my anticipation is by the end of May, we should be all together.
But you're out of the water by the middle of June, or middle of April, right?
By April 8th, yes.
The
That's
first
my
week
magic
of
date,
April.
yeah. Yeah, be above the high water line. So that's usually the first block, I would say roughly.
Is that really okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yep, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so we're excited to say that we're going to be moving along, and it's going to be starting.
Finally.
There's going to be oscillating traffic. It's going to be one lane. It's going to remain open. However, I want to make clear to everybody that that road will never be shut down. It will only have oscillating traffic. They may be having a traffic light. There may be a temporary traffic light set up, depending on how. Once again, we haven't had our pre-construction meeting yet. I'll get a lot more detail at that time. So,
Thanks, Eric.
open up any questions?
Alan, did you hear that?
Say that again?
Did you hear that?
I did.
Because this, yeah, okay.
You have to worry about his trucks anymore, though.
It's been a long time coming.
That affects it
Yeah.
quite a bit.
Few meetings. Very good, very nice. Anything else?
That was it?
Yanina?
I actually have something, just a quick note. So I just would like to recognize Lori, who will hit her 10 years with the town of Kennebunkport this Saturday.
Ooh.
And I just want to say that a lot of people don't last in public service a year. And Lori been with many other towns before, but was Kennebunkport for 10 years. And it's definitely a very, very challenging work. And I think this community definitely, this is wonderful community, and they deserved Lori as the town manager. And I just want to say from the department directors that we all know, believe me, we don't get it easy. We don't, but we could not ask for a better boss and a supervisor for us. So.
Very good.
We all agree.
Hey, Mike,
Yes.
I'd like to ask Lori a question. You passed me over if I had any other business. You forgot me.
Oh, yeah. Hey, do you have any other business, Alan?
Lori, can you give us an update about finding an engineering company to give us an analysis on the flooding of Ocean Avenue and the Kennebunk River challenges? I know that you were working on it.
Yes. So Eric, do you want to come up and join me? So one of the issues we've been talking about is the flooding in the Kennebunk River and how that impacts Dock Square and all of Ocean Avenue, the properties along there. And we've been in conversations with the town of Kennebunk on their side as well, and looking for people to partner with us on figuring that out. So one of the companies we reached out to was VHB in Boston. They're a national engineering company, but we talked to the Boston office. We had a Zoom call with Kennebunk and them this week. And they had studied some of our flooding maps, et cetera. And do you want to talk about what their approach was?
Yeah, so what they'd like to basically first study the area, so that they really want to look at the hydraulics throughout the area. So they'd want to be looking at all the back dunes around Kennebunk as well as ours and all the access, and take a look at really a few different things. They want to take a look at resiliency, number one, i.e. raising roads, raising locations. Does that make sense? Is a tide gate a feasible option for us? And if it was, where would it go? Those types of things. But they really want to look at the hydraulics first off and just trying to evaluate the overall watershed, if you will, in the area. And that's a study that they're anticipating, this is back of napkin once again, is about between $200,000 and $300,000 effort that they would estimate. The project would probably last between 9 and 18 months to develop a study around that. They've done work in other places such as Philadelphia, at their airport. I mean, they've been a national firm. They've been around for many, many years. Vanessa and Hagen back in the day. So this would have been by there now go by VHB, but they're a large firm. Obviously, it's an expensive firm. You know, be clear, but also it's hard to find that level of talent at a local level. It's a lot more than a site civil kind of situation. So I don't think Wood and Curran really was not interested. I think in this particular case, they didn't think it was necessarily in their wheelhouse. They are, you know, we did meet with another firm today about that, but, you know, we're not sure that that's the right approach just yet. So, for them, so.
We did talk to Kennebunk about if we were interested in moving forward, splitting the costs. And, you know, from the manager's perspective, I think she thinks that makes sense. Of course, she has a process and a board and a budget she has to get adopted. I also reached out to Southern Maine Planning, and briefed them on the potential costs, and they're putting their brainstorming hats on to look at other grant opportunities. So I think if we were to put some funding aside, what we would need to do is put out a request for proposals. You know, VHB would be one. They're going to send us a scope of work that they would propose, and we would interview people and determine who's the best partner moving forward. But I'd say that's the first meeting we've had where somebody said, yeah, I could do that.
Right.
So at the end, the outcome, the results would be, they would analyze that, understand the flow of the water, and then look at a couple of different options and come back and give you the kind of pros and cons of those options as well as cost estimates.
Yes.
Alan, you got questions?
No, and thank you very much.
Yep. Sorry I passed you over.
That's okay.
Okay, anybody, anything else? I'll entertain a motion as town warrant, sorry.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Move to adjourn.
Aye.
Move to adjourn. Aye. You got an aye? Move to adjourn, Alan?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Meeting's adjourned. Thanks. At